All right, guys, welcome back. If this is your first time here, we are helping you see if you should or shouldn't move to a certain spot. And today we have Jeff Petsche, and we're going to be talking all about Yorba Linda. And Jeff, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for the invite. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, just to give viewers kind of some context, how long have you been in Yorba Linda for as a resident?
I have been a resident of Yorba Linda for right at about 6 years now. I moved here in 2016.
Awesome. And then where did you reside or live before? Was it in California or a different spot?
I'm born and raised California. I was born in Downey. I believe you're in the Whittier area, so not far from where you're at. I was born in Downey, lived my whole life in California with the exception of 4 years when I was in the military. So I was in Biloxi, Mississippi for some training, but 3 years in Hawaii. And then the rest of my time has been in Southern California. I moved to Orange County in 1990. And so I lived there till about 2001, moved to the city of Corona from 01 to 16, and then back to Orange County, which specifically Yorba Linda in 2016.
Excellent. All right, so that is a little bit of Jeff's history, so you can kind of have some context for what it's like living in Yorba Linda. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to just dive into the map.
So as you can see, I'm going to zoom out just a tad bit. So Yorba Linda is a city within Orange County. We are, I would say, approximately 37, as a reference point, 37, maybe 40 miles southeast of Los Angeles, which everyone knows Los Angeles, major city in Southern California. And we are northeast Orange County. So we would be considered North Orange County, or a city in the northern part of Orange County. We are the last city that you would hit before getting into Riverside County. So once you break this Green River Golf Club border, if you will, you now are going into the Riverside County area, and your first city is going to be Corona that you're going to hit. So we're pretty much that last city right before you get into Riverside County. As you can see, the city north of Yorba Linda, Chino Hills State Park borders the city. There's some good and bad behind that. If we can address that, that'd be great. The good thing is it's a state park. Great biking trails, great hiking trails, tons of views. It's just a beautiful place to go visit. We go there and we do a lot of hiking in that area. The negative is we do border in the dry seasons fire risk. So when fires do break out in and around our area, we have had evacuations in our city. This is where you are typically going to get those problems. Occasionally down here, Black Star Canyon and the hills that are more in the Anaheim Hill market or Anaheim Hills area, you'll get the smoke and some ambers and potential risk from there as well. But a lot of the times what happens is if we get fires up in this area, we get a lot of that smoke and a lot of the risk of fires that take place. But Chino Hills State Park, great park to go visit, tons of bike trails. You can go all the way back into Prado Regional Park. It's just so many miles and miles and miles of hiking and bike riding back there. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you're like, the city's like, it's ingrained kind of like in the culture, I'm sure, because you're right next to it kind of thing.
Yeah, and it backs up to a lot of communities, like housing communities, and those are the ones that are at risk with evacuations when there are fires. But you park your car at the entry points and the trailheads to some of the trails in that area. But it's great. Some people would just walk out their backyard and they're in the Chino State Park and start hiking and bike riding. It's pretty cool.
That's amazing. That's cool. And yeah, and fires, I mean, it just kind of comes with the territory in California.
It does. And, dry season, Southern California, it's unfortunate, but it does. It's like anywhere else. Probably not as bad as some places that we've seen in the news. Unfortunate. A lot of communities have been completely destroyed. We've been fortunate. There have been in the past some houses that have been destroyed, and that they've rebuilt. And luckily it hasn't been too crazy. There, prior to me living here, there were years past that the fires were even worse than we see today. So I think we got a much better handle on fire prevention and keeping the brush back and fire lines and all the things that the firemen do to, create a safe environment for us. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about some of the different parts of
yeah.
Yorba Linda. So
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can see here on the map, you've got the red border, which is the city of Yorba Linda. Last census I looked at, we're at about 68 to 69,000 in population. And the city has 3 zip codes. 2 are technically residential zip codes. The 3rd zip code is for PO boxes only. So we really only have kind of a split city, if you will, 2 zip code city. I know there's cities out there that have, 15 different zip codes. So it's a pretty straightforward city with regards to, the residential side. I'm a residential real estate broker, have been in the business 20 years. The area that you see outlined here makes up roughly about, I want to say 20 square miles. 19 and a half of that is land. We don't have a lot of water. You see a little bit of water right here, which is a private lake. It's East Lake, makes up about 15. That's, in fact, you can see it behind me. That's an aerial photo of the East Lake community, which is basically right here. You see this little pocket of water. So this lake is about 15 acres. Was the community itself, the East Lake community itself, 1970s, 1990s, includes about 9 subdivisions and about 850 acres of landmass with mainly residential properties. So this is a private lake for the community. So it has a homeowners association, very, very reasonable. So if you are a homeowner of East Lake and you pay your association dues, then you have access to this lake. It's all electronic boats, no power, engine motors. There's some fishing allowed. They have great events at East Lake throughout the year. They have the 4th of July event, great Christmas parade. It takes place at this location. The homeowners with boats will decorate their boats, and they have like a really cool boat parade that goes through here. So a very big draw. There's a lot of events that the community in East Lake put on every year. So it's a great place to live. But it's pretty much, other than maybe a little bit of water at a golf course or something, it's pretty much your only water mass that you're going to see in Yorba Linda. Now, when you go a little bit more east over into this area, as you start to go toward Corona, which is the border of Riverside County, you're going to get into Bryant Ranch area. And sorry, excuse me. Excuse me. So you're going to get into the Bryant Ranch area up in here. And again, primarily residential. You do have some retail up into this area. You have the Susanna Bixby Bryant Museum and Botanic Garden. Great place to go visit. This area along the 91 freeway of Yorba Linda, much of this area is designated a bird sanctuary. So you got a ton of waterfowl birds. You got a ton of different species of birds in and around this part of Yorba Linda, which is awesome. It's really cool. I actually live right in this general area of Yorba Ranch and Esperanza, and we've just got birds everywhere. It's really, really cool. Nice. So this area, Bryant Ranch, get a lot of wind, because I know that part of talking about any city, you've got pros and cons, right? Yep. So you do get a lot of wind, and you are more susceptible to fire because of where you back up. You can see here, you've got housing tracts that back up to Chino Hills Park. And if that's where the fire originated, you run the risk of being evacuated. So when we hear of fire evacuations, this section of the city is typically what we see being evacuated in most cases. Occasionally, it might be a little bit more northwest, but this is pretty much where you're going to see a lot of that evacuation take place. As you go east to west from Bryant Ranch into the main part of Yorba Linda, because Bryant Ranch isn't going to make up your largest portion of the community from a mass standpoint. It's more of it is one of the 2 zip codes, but it's a smaller section. the main mass of your Yorba Linda community and your population, if you will, is going to be centrally located between Imperial and the border of Placentia, and probably right over into this area before you get into Bryant Ranch. So this is going to be the majority of your community. Now, Yorba Linda homes back in the 70s, of course, maybe even earlier than that, and as new construction in the 2000s and 10, 15, and so on, which is going to be more in your northern part of Yorba Linda. So that's kind of just an overview of, again, only 2 zip codes we're dealing with, but from east to west is kind of an overview of the city.
The north has been more developed more recently.
Yeah, when you get into Yorba Linda High School, which is going to be one of your newer high schools, we have 2 primary high schools in Yorba Linda, Esperanza and Yorba Linda High. So anything north of Bassin Cherry, when you get right here and you go north, this is going to be a newer community. You got new development as early as 3-4 years ago, new home tracks. So you got more development that has taken place up in this area. You get back down into our East Lake area, you're in the 70s to 90s range. You get over into this area, you're probably even into the 60s and 50s. But yeah, the newer development area, it's going to be more in that. When I say newer, probably within the last 5 to 10 years is going to be a little bit more northern Yorba Linda.
Right. Which is relatively new because the city, it's quite an old city, right? For California standards.
Well, I mean, you could go, any city, anywhere in the US, but you can go back 4,000 years and, there were Indian tribes that, just had landmass all over from San Bernardino to, you name it. My understanding is there were 3 main tribes, again, 4,000 years ago, that took up a lot of the landmass that we know of, that we now know today, being Orange County and Southern California and things like that. Yorba Linda, the name itself, was generated by from a gentleman by the name of Don Bernardo Yorba. And Linda is Spanish for beautiful. And Don Bernardo Yorba was granted somewhere in the neighborhood of about 14,000 acres that took up a lot of the Orange County area at the time, of which Yorba Linda was part of that. And he built a home here. He was 58, I think, when he passed away in 1858. So we can go back all the way to the 1800s as far as, the city, the history behind Yorba Linda, if you will. He was a very successful rancher in California. At one point, he was the second wealthiest individual in the whole 19th century period. I believe at one point he was the second largest landowner in California, but very successful rancher. He was married 3 times, 15 children. And he had a home. I'll blow it was called the Yorba Hacienda. It's a California Historic Landmark 226 currently today. And let me get my bearings. There we go. Let me pull this up. So his hacienda, his property was right here. If you go to Esperanza Road, if you're ever in the area, and you go to Echo Hill Lane, there'll be a monument as you enter that housing tract right where my mouse is at. And there is a California historic monument right there, which is, it's a stone monument. Many say the stones were made from some of the adobe that he built his home with or from. And there's a bronze plaque that talks about some of the history behind him. And so this is where his property was. It was one of the largest homes ever built back in those days. There's been reports of anywhere from 80 to 200 rooms in this house at one point. So it's kind of crazy. But this is where his family lived. And you can see here to the left, there is a historic Yorba cemetery. This cemetery is very interesting. It's only open for a tour 1 day a month, the first Saturday of every month, except in May, between 10 and 11 o'clock. So if you want to ever look it up and check it out, historic Yorba Cemetery was part of his land. It sat right beneath the hill of his hacienda. In fact, himself, his second wife, and I believe 8 of his children are buried at this cemetery. When he passed away in the late fifth or early mid 50s, 58, he was originally buried in Los Angeles at a cemetery. And when that cemetery closed and this cemetery was open, if you will, as a private cemetery, it's I think one of the oldest private cemeteries in the country. His remains were moved in the early 1900s. And so some of his descendants and some of his family and are currently buried there. There's about 400 grave sites there. You can drive by and you can see it, but you can't access it except for that tour. So it's kind of cool. There's a little bit of a local legend behind the cemetery. Some of you, if you're watching the video, may have heard of it, called the Pink Lady. The Pink Lady apparently emerges from the cemetery on June 15th. I don't know why that day. There's never been any documented sightings of her as a ghost, but there has been levels of energy that have been tested there, that sense of spirit, I guess, which is just a kind of cool little local legend. She was a descendant of Yorba, Bernardo Yorba, and story is that she passed away in a carriage accident coming back from a high school dance, and her spirit still apparently lives on. And I think her name, I got a note here, Alvina de los Reyes. So if you're ever interested, if you're into ghosts, check out historic Yorba Cemetery and the Pink Lady, and you'll get a lot of history on it. It's kind of cool.
Interesting. And so that tour they do, it's simply to kind of like visit the gravesite of the founder. Visit
the cemetery.
Right.
I have not personally ever been on that tour, so I can't speak, about the tour itself because I've never been on it. But my understanding is there's a tour guide, talks about the history of the cemetery. It is currently, and I don't recall the exact year, but the county of Orange privately took over that property. There was a time period where this cemetery was vandalized and it just basically was non-existent. It was technically restored, is my understanding, and it's privately owned by the county of Orange, and the Parks and Recreation maintain it. So it is considered a historic cemetery. It's not technically open to the public at any given time, like some cemeteries might be. But it's kind of cool if you're ever interested and you're into that kind of stuff. It's worth looking up. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting. Yeah, like urban legend kind of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Cool little story.
Yeah,
and that's actually not far. I've actually ridden my bike down there and taken a run down that way, and I've seen the monument and stuff like that. So it's kind of neat.
Yeah. Let's So I saw earlier Yorba Linda High School. You said that's the newer high school.
Yeah, and I feel bad that I don't know the exact year it was open, to be honest with you.
That's all right. We can let us know in the comments if you know. We can throw it up on the screen also.
Yeah, I'm 56 years old. My kids are way out of the school age by now, so none of my children have ever, and I personally have never gone to any of the schools in Yorba Linda. They are definitely known for their schools. Yorba Linda is a very family-based city. I would say probably 50% of the families that live here have children under 18 years old, is the last number I saw with the census. So yeah, it's a very family-oriented city. Placentia Yorba Linda School District is ranked in the top 1,000 for nationwide. Many of our high schools are in the top, we have the 2 high schools. Yorba Linda High School, if I'm not mistaken, I had a note here somewhere, give me a second, but I believe it was at last I saw, and I don't recall when the census came out, but it was about a top 200, about 140 to 150 in California as a ranking. So because I'm in real estate, that's one of the questions I always get is, families that are wanting to move here. It's primarily for, it's a family oriented city and the school district.
Yeah. Schools are, I was going to, I live in Whittier, but we always hear the schools in that part of Orange County are pretty good. So
Yeah.
So
Now, technically, Esperanza is in Anaheim.
I was gonna say it looks like because it's just outside the border, but it's
right. So it's an Anaheim address, but many residents of Yorba Linda, because it's Petsche Yorba Linda School District, many residents based on their boundary lines go to Esperanza. My girlfriend's son is going to be a sophomore at Esperanza, and they have an amazing engineering program that he's involved in. So, but yeah, so it's technically Anaheim address, but it's one of our 2 high schools. And then as far as the other schools, if you're watching this video and you've got family and you're thinking of relocating, and we all know around real estate, and I love the channel that you have, it gives people a perspective. I always love doing research on destinations, right? Where I'm going to want to move before I make that move. It could be cost of living, it could be schools if I have children, etc. Because real estate, and moving, it's about a lifestyle, right? It's not just about the house that you're buying, but it's about a lifestyle you're about to live in.
Yes.
And so if you are watching this video and you are thinking of moving to Yorba Linda and you have children, definitely look into the Petsche Yorba Linda School District. You'll see some amazing reviews. Elementary schools in Yorba Linda specific, we have about 8. And when I say elementary, that could be K through 8. They're mostly K through 5, a few are K through 6, but we do have a couple that go K through 8. I know when I was in middle school back in the day, it was 6 through 8. So we have 2 middle schools that are 6, 7, and 8, so 6 through 8. And then the 2 high schools, which is obviously 9 through 12. So depending on what elementary school you choose to go to, you might bypass technically middle school, a separate school. You may stay like Travis Ranch, for example. You may say K through 8, and then you'll jump right to high school after that. So.
Yeah. So you guys have great schools. Of course, everything in life, nothing is free, so it comes at a cost. So let's talk about the cost of living in the different parts of Yorba Linda, and if people are kind of like different price points maybe, and just the general price point of overall Yorba Linda.
Yeah, so the median price point in Yorba Linda, obviously it fluctuates, right? It fluctuates month to month. We're in a shifting market now, things are changing, but you're going to be around the $1.1 million. It would be right around that range. You might get into some lower end lower end price points that are condominiums, maybe a couple older houses in that 8 to 9 range. But if you move to Yorba Linda, you expect to have a Southern California price tag to come along with it. The median income last I checked was in about 120,000, 125,000 household median income. If that gives you any kind of perspective as the type of individual that lives in Yorba Linda. Again, from a population standpoint, it does side heavy on families. Like I said, it's probably 50%, close to 50% with children under 18 years old. And with the age is going to be 60% of the age group is going to be 25 to 65. You're about almost half of that starts at about 45 and up. So yeah, from a price perspective, it's Southern California. It's going to be expensive to come and live here. Yeah, yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's always like the con for people. Because Yorba, cities like Yorba Linda, Fullerton, I always think like, well, what are the cons? Like it's amazing to live there, other than the price tag and maybe taxes of California and all that good stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of great things about the city. Let's go into, so we have these 2 different high schools. Yorba Linda, Esperanza.
Yep.
We talked a little bit about the history. We can't talk about Yorba Linda without talking about Richard Nixon. So.
Oh yeah, yes. I mean, when you hear Yorba Linda, that's kind of the first thing. I mean, most people don't go all the way back to the 1800s and learn the history behind Don Bernardo Yorba and how that all started. You hear Yorba Linda, you think of the 37th president, Richard Nixon.
Yes.
Because this is his birthplace.
Yeah.
And we have the Richard Nixon Library, as you know, 37th president. This is his birthplace, so it is a National Historic Museum that we have, correct? Yep. So you have the Richard Nixon Library and Museum. It's open to the public. They have tours and things like that. They've got replicas of, I believe, Marine One, the helicopter out in the front lawn area. A lot of events take place here. So it's a great place to visit. It's his birthplace, his birth home there. Like I said, it's definitely a National Historic Landmark. And when you hear Yorba Linda, that's definitely what you think of is Richard Nixon. This is his birthplace.
Yeah. It's really nice. People have weddings there too. I had a friend.
Oh yeah. It's a great
there.
venue. If you have any kind of events coming up, I highly recommend just going and checking it out and talking to their event staff. It's just a great group of people. It's a cool museum to just go walk through and check out and, look at all the history there. And it's pretty cool. So if you're ever in Yorba Linda, if you're near Yorba Linda, you're passing through, you're visiting, check out the Nixon Library. It's pretty neat.
Yeah. It's a good spot. I love him or hate him, Richard Nixon.
You what?
Whether you love him or hate him as a president, he was definitely a divisive. He's an interesting one. If you say that. I guess like some popular destinations people frequently visit within Yorba Linda.
You're gonna obviously have the library, the Chino Hill State Park, even though it's not Yorba Linda, it's just right in our backyard. So the hiking trails, Yorba Regional Park right here, you can see it. It is technically outside the border of Yorba Linda, but it's Yorba Regional Park. I consider it Yorba Linda, but it's going to be technically Anaheim if you were to just Google it or look up an address. But this is a great park. A lot of people visit this park for picnics and venues and fishing. And I run through this park. I walk through this park. It's an amazing park to see because once you're in the grounds of the park, you literally, even though it borders the 91 freeway and the Santa Ana riverbed here, and there's tons of bike trails, you can take that all the way down to the beach. Even though you have the commercialization of Southern California that we're so used to living in, when you get inside this park, you lose all that. You are surrounded by pine trees and just beauty and ducks. And I just feel like it's a place that if I want to escape kind of your normal everyday world, the Costco's and the Targets and all that, I go to Yorba Regional Park. And sometimes it's a good walk or run, but I'll run or walk from my house down to the park. And it's a good round trip, 7-8 miles. It'd take you a good couple hours to do that. But it just allows me to get away. I really feel like I'm in a different place because there's tons of walking trails and you're through pine tree. You feel like you don't see mountains, but you just have that feeling. It's really cool.
Nice. That's great. Yeah. I was friends that have lived in Yorba Linda. They've told me it's a pretty big park. Like you can get lost.
Yeah. I don't know exactly how many acres that park is, but it's but as you can see, it's very long. It's not that wide, but it's very long. But yeah, like I said, people go there all the time they have softball fields there, so they have softball games. They have, tons of picnics and events that take place there. I think during the summer they have a movie in the park once a month where the Park and Recreations host like a movie in the park there. It's kind of cool. It is a paid parking park. So if you're going to go in the park with your vehicle, if you don't have I don't believe that's a state park. It's a regional park. So I don't think a state pass would work, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But there's just a small $5, I don't know, $7 parking fee or something like that. It's for all day or whatever. But outside of that, you can just park and then just walk right into the park. And there's, if you can find parking, there's no cost. So it's kind of cool. But yeah, we do have a couple of golf courses. One is a country club golf course, so it's private. The other one is public. In fact, there's an event coming up September 2nd at Black Gold Golf Club, which is over. I'm going to move the map here and you can see it. It's an 18-hole public golf course right here. in kind of the northwest part, I guess it would be part of Yorba Linda. We'll be sponsoring a putting contest at the golf tournament they're putting on. So I'll do a little plug for their tournament. It's not my tournament, but it's a giving back tournament put on by Black Gold Golf Club. And it is to support the Folds of Honor Foundation. So all of the proceeds that they earn after the event, pay for all the expenses of the event, is 100% donated to the Folds of Honor. So it's very, it's going to be based around military. There's going to be static props of military Jeeps and different things like that. And my company is going to be hosting, or I should say, sponsoring a putting contest at this event. So we do have the 2 golf courses in the city. The Black Gold is public. And then we have the Yorba Linda Country Club, which is going to be private, which is, there's houses around the country club and things like that. You've got the public golf course up here, the Black Gold Golf Club. And then down in this area, Clubhouse Drive, you've got the country club area. Interesting thing about the Black, I just did a video on my YouTube channel. And I was interviewing a couple of the golf pros and the tournament directors, and Black Gold Golf Club was built on an old oil fields.
Ooh.
And a lot of people I didn't even know that. And so and I don't quote me, I don't recall exactly the year, but many, many years ago, all of that was oil fields back in the day. Yeah. So if you go to my YouTube channel and watch the video on Black Gold Golf Club, you'll hear some of the history behind that in that interview, a little bit of the history behind that. It's kind of neat.
Nice. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And for the private golf club, it's funny how there's not like a distinct kind of little maybe map or like, little pin, but
right.
that's where it's at. And I'm sure they're, have you been to that one?
No, I'm not a member. And I honestly just started getting into golf again. I used to golf a lot, and then I had shoulder surgery, so that kind of went away, but I'm getting back into it. I'm actually taking lessons at Black Gold Golf Club. So I apologize. I don't have any information on the membership fees and the cost behind the private country club. But now that I'm getting more into golf and I'm obviously living in Yorba Linda, I am going to look into it. But I just don't know what that looks like.
No, that's all right. Yeah, I was just curious, like, how is it? Is it just like for the club fact, or do people actually go there for like the good driving ranges kind of thing?
Oh no, golfing, socializing, you name it. Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah, we've got some friends that one of the husband, some friends of ours, the husband's a member of the golf course. So yeah, he's a big golfer, always has been. Yeah.
Got it. Cool. So for the culture of the city of Yorba Linda, so it's a lot of families.
Yep.
Which is highly unusual because, or I should say, a lot of families are leaving California, I should say. I saw a stat like recently that in like 30 years, most people in California will be, they're like not going to be minors pretty much just because of the cost of living in the state. So that's really unique, actually. I think that's fantastic. I guess when I always think of Yorba Linda, I think of it as like, oh yeah, it's a nice city. Like it's really nice. Like if you go and visit.
It's not gonna be a city that's gonna draw in. I don't want to use the word tourist because you will get some people that go to the Nixon library and various things like that. But if you're looking for a nightlife or anything like that, this isn't like a city you're gonna want to go typically to. And most of the places around here, restaurants, they're done at 10, 11 o'clock. You might get a random pocket of a bar here or a bar there that stays open much later. For the most part, it's a very quiet city, not a ton of nightlife per se. Now, the downtown area has just been redeveloped, if you will. The old area of Main Street and downtown Yorba Linda Main Street, there's like some new shops and some new restaurants and things like that, but they still have that earlier curfew, if you will. So it's a lot different than maybe if you're familiar with Orange County, downtown Orange or Old Town Orange or downtown Yorba, Fullerton, where you've got a little bit more of a bar scene and a restaurant scene that stays open a little bit longer. You're not going to really get that in Yorba Linda per se. So If you're looking for a nightlife, you may start here and have dinner, and then you'll go down to Newport Beach, or you go down to LA or go somewhere else where you can hang out till 2 a.m. if that's your game, if that's your jive, and that's your thing. So
Yeah.
but that's not typically what you're going to find here.
Where is your guys' main street, or your kind of downtown?
This is like Main Street. You'll get a couple of some older buildings that are still there. You got to right on this is a cool guy by the name of Mike. He's like an old school barber. He's probably lived there freaking 50, 60 years, who knows.
Oh, that's cool.
But he's still doing old school barber haircuts, and kind of a cool guy, and he owns a little Mexican kind of restaurant right here. And he's one of the few guys that actually from an entertainment standpoint, because he'll have live bands in his restaurant, stays open a little bit longer than most of the places that close here. So it's kind of cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so for you guys going to the beach, what's your typical route when you head to the beach?
Yeah. So the beaches are really, obviously it's Southern California. You're definitely going to hit some traffic, but the 91 freeway to the 55 south, and the 55 is just going to stop into Newport Boulevard down in Newport Beach. Prior to getting into real estate, I was a police officer in Newport Beach for 13 years. And so, yeah, you just go straight down 55 south from the 91, and you're about 30, no traffic. You're probably 30 or so minutes to hitting the beach area, depending on where you're going within Newport or Huntington or Laguna Beach. Laguna Beach might be a little bit of an easier drive because you can just take the toll road and it'll drop you right down. But Laguna Beach is just a harder city to get into. It's either Laguna Canyon or PCH, right? You don't have a whole lot of, there's no other way unless you hike in there.
Yeah.
For the most part. So you're about 35 minutes to the beach. It's not bad.
That's not bad at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Assuming you leave at the right time, of course.
That's
always like the quotes when we talk about Southern California.
We have a motor home, and we'll take it down to the beach, and we'll go into Huntington, maybe Bolsa Chica, and go into the state beaches. And it's a 30 to 40 minute drive, even with the motor home, if we time it right and we're not hitting any traffic. But yeah, it's not that far. You're not driving hours. You're probably 90 minutes to Big Bear. You might maybe two hours, depending on how the road is up to Big Bear. You're about 4 hours to Vegas from here. You're 45 minutes to Los Angeles. So we're really centrally located to get to a lot of different destination locations that are very popular. And so in a reasonable amount of time, minus Southern California traffic, of course.
Yes. What are some things you don't like about Yorba Linda?
It's an interesting question, because I'm at an age where, I'm fine with quiet, right? I don't need I'm not 20 anymore. I don't need the nightlife. So I don't need to feel like I'm constantly leaving. However, I will say that we do find ourselves going to restaurants outside of our city and trying different things, primarily just to try something new and different. I don't have any children of school age, so I'm not involved in that. Although my girlfriend has children in 7th and 10th, or going to be 8th and 10th grade. So I have been somewhat involved with some of their programs and the things they do with school. My girlfriend's children aren't really involved in any of the sport activities that take place with Little League and soccer and things like that. So I don't really see a lot of that on a regular basis. There's not a lot I'd say that's really negative. I mean, it can get a little warm, it can get a little windy at times, but I guess everywhere you live, you're going to have something that, nowhere, I don't know, maybe there's a perfect place out there. I'm not, haven't visited yet or don't know about yet.
I keep searching. I'm trying to
I will tell you, when I first moved here 6 years ago, I was a little disappointed that everything closed so early. Not that I'm a party animal and hang out till dark 30, but 10 o'clock could be a little early for me on a weekend. I'm a night guy. I'm a night owl per se. So, but I've kind of gotten used to that. I don't really pay much attention to that. But when I first moved here, I was like, wow, why isn't that open? It's only 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or, that kind of thing. Very quiet. I mean, we even live not far from the train track that parallels the 91 freeway, BNSF and Amtrak, and we're in a no horn zone area, so you don't get the blowing of the horn and all that. And when we first moved to this particular home, you notice the train, but I don't even notice it anymore. It's just not even there. But in the beginning, when we first moved to this specific house, we bought this house 3 years ago, and it was noticeable, but it wasn't annoying. It wasn't like, we knew it going in when we bought the home, but yeah, it's fine now. But I don't know that I have a whole lot of, the fires, you can't control that, right? So you can't really say I don't like it. If it happens, it happens and you deal with it. So the city, interesting enough, I believe, I want to say it was in the 70s. Don't quote me, but the city used to be policed by Brea Police Department. I believe it was the 90s, from the 70s to the 90s. I think it was 71 to the 90s, in that range somewhere. And now from a law enforcement standpoint, it's the Orange County Sheriffs. So unlike some cities, you might have a specific municipality city or municipality police department. Right. Like when I worked at Newport Beach, it was Newport Beach Police Department. We have the sheriffs. So we have Orange County Sheriffs that patrol, from a law enforcement standpoint, our city. So that I think that changed in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yorba Linda, like the city, I've always heard is very safe.
Oh yeah. It's like any city. Look, I was a police officer for 13 years, and you can't put a bubble around a city. You're always going to have some level of crime of some kind. Newport Beach, why do we have this crime? Why do we have that crime? Why is it gang down at the beach? It's the beach. You can't close the beach. You get a gang from Santa Ana come down and they do whatever they're going to do. But yeah, overall, it's definitely a very, very safe city. You're going to have your car break-ins, and you're going to have your, the people these days, like stealing packages from your porch and, various things like that. You're going to have your car accidents, your drunk drivers. It's just, you're not going to never not have that in any city. So overall, very safe city.
I've always wanted to catch somebody trying to steal a package. Like, hey, get off my neighbor's yard. Like, what are you doing?
Use one of those video cams or something like that.
Yeah. Or just like in the moment to confront someone, to be like, that's not cool. Like, what are you doing?
Well, you say you want to catch someone, and then sometimes you don't necessarily want to have an encounter with someone who's willing to do that, because you don't know their mental state and you don't know what they're willing to do for that package. So sometimes it sounds like it'd be cool to catch them, and then other times my recommendation is just, hey, be a good witness.
Yeah, take a photo.
Whatever. Yeah. I'd rather be a live witness than a dead hero. If that's been a saying that has been out there forever. But kudos to those that engage, and But yeah.
All right. So if I'm thinking about moving to the area and I want to visit Yorba Linda, should I stay in a hotel, Airbnb? What's kind of the best way to go about that?
Yeah, it's going to depend on your situation. I think it's a great idea that if you're thinking of moving to any city, before you drop a lot of money and buy a home, that you feel the city, right? You feel it, you hear it, you smell it, you go to restaurants, you just commute to work, whatever it is, unless you're retired, whatever. But I think it's a great strategy if you can have the time to do that and you can afford it, to be in the city that you want to be for a period of time that you feel comfortable that, okay, remember what I said, Yorba Linda is not a cheap place to buy a home. We're talking about $1 million, if not higher. And so before I spend that kind of money, I want to know that I didn't make a mistake and go, wow, I really don't like this. So Airbnb, short-term rental under 30 days is not allowed in Yorba Linda. Okay. So that's one thing you got to look at. So if you're going to be here more than 30 days, then you can look into a longer stay rental type of arrangement. There are a few hotels within the city of Yorba Linda, and then obviously surrounding cities within a mile or two, Anaheim Hills, Brea, Placentia, you're going to find plenty of hotels. Do you really want to live in a hotel for 30 days? I don't know. Do you think you'll be able to get a good feel for Yorba Linda in 1 week? Maybe. I don't know. That's going to be up to you. But I do recommend that unless you're from here and you moved out, now you're coming back, or you have family that's here, or you're comfortable with just your online research, then that's on you. But I'm a true believer. A lot of my sellers who have recently sold and left California, they already knew where they wanted to go. But when I talked to them about why did you choose Utah? Why did you choose Idaho? Oh, I have family there. Oh, we vacation there, or, you know, we have a second home there. They already know the feel of where they're moving. And so that destination isn't quite going to be a culture shock to them.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's a great strategy. If you're going to move to anywhere, that you not only research online, but you try to spend as much time there as you can to know, hey, you may not have that luxury, right? It might be a job transfer. Your kids may want to go to a certain school for a certain program, whatever, and you just make it work. But if all the stars line up perfectly, definitely try to live here for a little bit and see if you like it.
Yeah, come visit and kind of, even if it's just for the weekend, like a long weekend, and you're able to.
Yeah, if you think you can make an educated decision and an informed decision in a weekend, then fine, go for it. Feel free to call me if you ever have any questions as well. But yeah, feeling it, living it, seeing it, understanding the traffic and just the people and, how you're treated, and just you can never go wrong when you do that. I've got several police officers that have left the state of California, friends of mine that are now retired, and to Tennessee or some other state, and some are coming back. They thought grass was greener. They thought it'd be nice, but it wasn't quite what they expected. And now they're trying to come back. And it's harder. Once you leave California, it's tough to come back because things much more expensive.
That's really interesting. Like them leaving and then coming back.
It's rare.
Yeah,
it's very rare. But when I hear it, I kind of tilt my head like, why? And some areas just don't accept you as well as others. They know you're not a local, and you just don't get the reception that maybe you were hoping for. I don't think it's very common. I think that's a low percentage.
Yeah, that's pretty rare. But yeah, it is harder to come back to California once you leave.
It is.
I've heard. I don't know. California is just like its own like thing, or it's interesting.
Well, you can't beat. I mean, let's be honest. You can't beat the all round year weather, right?
Yeah.
You got beach, you got mountains, you got desert. There's just a lot, but you're going to pay for that. It's not a cheap state to live in. And I think you mentioned earlier the migration, and being that I'm in real estate, I do see that a lot. The baby boomers of the world, many aren't leaving, or are. I mean, many, they bought their house for $40,000 and it's paid for. So they're not quite affected by the inflation as much as we are, to some level, but many are living on fixed incomes. So that income does go farther somewhere else. So they sell their $1 million house here, paid free and clear. They buy a $200,000 house somewhere else, and they still don't have a mortgage, but their money goes farther. So you do see some staying. I have some clients stay because of family, meaning they want to just be near family. Some stay because of medical reasons, and the older individuals that just need more health care. So it's all over the board, but I believe the last statistic I read, which was early this year, late last year, it was the first year we had a decline in population in California, which I think was 2021. So that is a little bit of a sign that there is some migration of people taking their money, goes farther somewhere else. But no, absolutely. That's kind of the trend for over the. Yeah. That's just how it's going. It's how it is, and that's kind of everywhere to some extent. So
cool. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for giving us a tour of Yorba Linda.
Absolutely. And, hope I didn't miss anything.
Yeah, and if you did, Jeff is always available. His information will be up top and down below in the description, and you can feel free to reach out to him directly. So
yeah, awesome. Appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. Till next time.